obviously this news reverberating, well, around the world, but around SW1 and Westminster as well.
Yes, indeed. The Prime Minister knew before we did. Of course, he was informed this afternoon and indeed has tweeted the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak saying wishing His Majesty a full and speedy recovery. I have no doubt he'll be back to full strength in no time, and I know the whole country will be wishing him well. And Sir Keir Starmer, the leader of the Labour Party, also got his tweet out on behalf of the Labour Party. I wish His Majesty all the very best for his recovery. We look forward to seeing him back to swift, full health. So, unsurprisingly, lots of people talking about this. Huge news, of course, and constitutionally important as well. Now, I understand the weekly audiences between the King and where the King and the Prime Minister meet, those will apparently continue unless the doctors say that they shouldn't. That is, of course, a fixture and has been throughout the Queen's reign and, of course, the King's short reign so far. And the Prime Minister and the King, of course, get on well. They speak warmly of one another. But at this, obviously, this is huge news constitutionally as well, and there could be all sorts of ramifications if the King is not well again, which, of course, we all hope he is very, very soon.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sarah, I gather that the King not only was making sure that the Prime Minister was aware, but has been busy personally telling other members of the royal family of his diagnosis.
Yes, and it was the King personally that informed his siblings and his children. Both Prince William and Prince Harry told by the King of his diagnosis. And just to pick up on Peter's point about the weekly audiences with the Prime Minister, if they can't happen in person, they said there will be other arrangements made, so I guess we might revert to Zoom, should it be determined that he should minimise in-person contact. He's planning and hoping to carry out select meetings still in private. He will, as you mentioned, Daisy, undertake official red box paperwork. He will continue to be available for state duties, including Privy Council meetings. How they will work is still not decided as yet. Again, that could be done remotely should it be deemed that he shouldn't have too much contact with others. The Prince of Wales returning to public duties this week. He may well be taking on additional duties that were meant to be carried out by his father. Queen Camilla, a full programme of duties for her. All working members of the royal family will carry on with their duties, and as and when needed will pick up those of the King.
And Sarah, it's interesting, isn't it? Obviously Peter and myself and yourself were thinking about and talking about the constitutional implications, but this is a family who's really, really going through the mill at the moment. This is a family who, Kate seemed such a fit and healthy young woman, but incapacitated for 3 months with something that we know is serious, because you don't get incapacitated for 3 months, particularly when you've got such a high-profile public-facing role. Then that, three young children to look after and all the rest of it. And now, the patriarch of the family diagnosed with cancer. They must really be feeling it. And we know that they've got the issues between Montecito and Windsor with siblings not speaking to each other. It must be a very, very difficult time for them.
Yes, and while the King has now revealed his cancer diagnosis, let's not forget Sarah Ferguson, OK, not a working member of the royal family, but Sarah Ferguson also recently revealed that she has been diagnosed with skin cancer following her breast cancer diagnosis last year. So this is a family that are really being hit hard at the moment. 3 members of the family now suffering serious ill health.
Yeah, no, that's a very, very good point. Any other reactions from Westminster? And Peter, on a sort of wider political issue, this is the sort of news that takes attention away from politicians, and where politicians will be thinking, and of course we had so much of this type of news with the Philip's death, the Queen's death, coronation, and so on. And I think many people were hoping that was going to have a period of quiet calm from Buckingham Palace and Clarence House and Kensington Palace, but no.
Yes, and there will be a sense that, of course, the political news that the government wants to speak about this week, that's all gone. There are so few political things that we will be talking about. It was due to be a relatively quiet week politically. We're going to recess for half-term. The House will rise on Thursday. But, of course, I would imagine very fractious exchanges between Sir Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak, usually on Wednesdays or Prime Minister's Questions. I would imagine it'll be a more sedate affair this week as they pay tribute to the King and, of course, wish him well in Parliament. I would wonder whether there'll be personal visits as well.
And Sarah, we just mentioned Montecito. Some breaking news on that front.
Some breaking news. We understand that the Duke of Sussex, Prince Harry, is travelling to the UK after speaking with his father about his diagnosis. He is returning to the UK to see him in the coming days, and that's according to a source close to Prince Harry. I mean, I think that's significant.
Now, I don't want to be somebody who overreacts to the smallest bit of news that comes from Montecito, but that seems to me quite serious.
Yes, I mean, I think that gives us a sign of the seriousness of this. I am sure that since his father first went into hospital and since it was first announced that his father was going into hospital for the prostate treatment and that his sister-in-law was in hospital, I am sure that Prince Harry has never felt further away and that distance greater. We know that the relationship with his father isn't nearly as strained as the relationship with his brother.
Yes.
And they have been in contact. There'd been a phone call on the King's birthday in November. Prince Harry has now spoken to his father and he is coming home to see his father, given this news.
It would be fascinating to see whether he'd bring the children, to see whether he'd bring Archie and Lily.
Yes, there's no mention of whether Meghan or the children are coming back. At this stage, it looks like it's Prince Harry returning to see his father and obviously making that trip back. It is a long time since they have really had any face-to-face time together, because even during the coronation, that was not a possibility. And Prince Harry returned for ahead of the Invictus Games later last year. Still didn't see his father then, so he is returning now, and I think that is significant.
Yes, I mean, that sounds serious. On a personal note, I'm very pleased to hear that, because I think one of the people that the British public, one of the things the British public would really love to see is some bridges being built and some, you know, because most of us are very proud of the royal family. We wish them well. We want them to be a fully functioning family. And watching the family, particularly those two brothers, really tearing strips off each other, but being told that they're tearing strips off each other behind closed doors, and certainly publicly from one side, there was not much holding back. I think a lot of people found it quite upsetting.
Well, and Prince Harry himself wrote in his book, didn't he, that there was the summit between his father, William, and himself in the grounds of Frogmore House, when his father said, "Please, boys, don't make my last years a misery." There has been no kind of rapprochement between Harry and his brother at all, but you wonder whether times like this might be the catalyst that they need to come back together. And having said that, Daisy, we did talk about that at the time of the death of the Queen. We hoped that
we did.
Sighting of the four of them on the long walk was the start of more positive things.
And of course, many people would feel if your wife had been in hospital for a number of weeks, was recuperating at home, had been, obviously had something quite serious, that maybe your brother would reach out then, that maybe Kate's illness and recuperation might have been the moment. We're not led to believe that was, but maybe now, maybe Harry will look at William and think, you've got a sick wife and a sick father. Maybe you could do with some brotherly love.
Well, and also this is a moment where William could really do with someone else to take on some of the burden of responsibility as well. And in the past couple of weeks, I've thought often, gosh, isn't it a shame that Harry and Meghan aren't there to share this burden and to be able to pick up some of those responsibilities and to be out there, to be the forward-facing monarchy.
And Peter, from a sort of soft diplomacy front, obviously the royal family isn't meant to get involved in politics, but politicians lean on the royal family often. They'll say, could you do a state dinner for the Americans, because that might help us negotiate a trade deal, or whatever it might be. The royal family is very useful to the body politic.
Yes, absolutely. What we call soft power, as you say, the diplomatic and the image of the UK around the world, as well as not the sort of here today, gone tomorrow politicians that are, I have so many American friends who can't keep up with who the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom is, but the Queen, of course, was there for such a long time. Charles having, a short reign so far. We hope it'll be much, much longer, of course, but there are lots of international reaction to this, and of course, people who really think of the royal family when they think of Britain. It is such a clear constitutional and historical part of our country. I should say just as well, if I can, Daisy, we've had a little bit more political reaction from some of the main political leaders. Humza Yousaf, who's of course the First Minister of Scotland and the leader of the Scottish National Party, says, "My thoughts and prayers are with His Majesty the King. I wish him the very best for a speedy recovery and return to public life. My thoughts are also with Her Majesty the Queen and other members of the royal family." at what I know will be a worrying time for them all. And of course, the Scottish National Party wants Scottish independence, but they've always advocated that the monarchy should still continue to be the monarchs of Scotland. Jeffrey Donaldson, the Democratic Unionist leader, of course, busy day for them, and Rishi Sunak out in Northern Ireland, sending His Majesty the King every good wish as he commences his treatment. We pray for a full and speedy recovery.
And again, coming back to this issue of the King deciding, first of all, to go public on the issues around his prostate, and now there's much more serious news going public with his cancer diagnosis. It's interesting to me when you compare that to a lot of politicians, particularly we think of American presidents and so on, but British politicians do it as well. They desperately want to be seen as fighting fit, full of vim and vigour, never admitting if there is some sort of health problem going on. And sometimes the older politicians are even more concerned to say, I might be old, but I'm still as fit as a flea. And it's interesting that the King has decided not to go down that route, but I wonder whether people will look at him differently in that way that politicians get concerned they'll be treated differently if they show some illness or some perceived weakness.
Perceived weakness, yes. No, certainly. I mean, it would be unthinkable for someone to run for President of the United States without releasing their full medical that they had done, although there are allegations that Donald Trump's one wasn't exactly true a few years ago, and that he had filled it out himself. But certainly there's a lot of transparency in terms of politicians these days. There's a lot of, we know quite a lot as well about our own Prime Minister's health. He talks a lot about fitness and how his own diet. We've been hearing about his fasting, his 36-hour fasting in the last little while. But certainly the whole idea in public life is that you are almost superhuman, that certain things that afflict other people that don't afflict you. And this is a very open thing for a public figure, and especially someone who is the monarch to have, because as you know far better than I do, the Queen of course kept her medical history so private. So to be so open about this, both in the past with the prostate examination and the cancer announced today, that is something very different.
And on that subject, obviously Sarah has just been telling us that they've let it be known that the King personally told members of his family, his siblings and his children of this cancer, told the Prime Minister, and then told all of us. I just want to get some medical reaction to that way, perhaps a slightly more modern way of dealing with, back in the day, don't forget, people used to call cancer the big C. They wouldn't even say the word cancer. So